The Dark Half is a 1993 American film that was written and directed by George Romero, based off the 1989 Stephen King novel of the same name. And it stars Timothy Hutton, Michael Rooker, and Amy Madigan. Stephen King seems to dislike most of his film adaptations, which I get, so I kind of wonder how he feels about this one. Me, I have mixed feelings, but it's a decently fun ride. The plot follows Thad Beaumont, played by Timothy Hutton, a popular character actor who's worked consistently since the late 70s. That said, I'm mostly unfamiliar with his work. He did play a character in The Haunting of Hill House, one of Mike Flanagan's many nods to Stephen King, so that's really cool. Now, the beginning of this film really threw me for a loop, because if you saw *Malignant* from a few years ago, I think you'll know what I mean. And arguably my favorite scene of the entire film. It didn't disappoint, although I wished there was more of that type of stuff, just wacky. Don't get me wrong, though, this film does have plenty of wacky moments. So fast forward a few decades, and Thad's a fairly successful author in the literary world. But what he seems to do best is writing murder mystery novels under the name George Stark. And he's, tired of hiding behind that alter ego, so to speak. He wants the full credit for his work, and he decides to make the risky move of putting that name to rest and coming clean publicly. But immediately after he puts the George Stark name to rest, people that he knows or has associated with begin to just show up murdered one at a time. And Thad's fingerprints seem to be showing up at these crime scenes as well, so he thinks that maybe he has some unexplained connection to this killer. Like many of Stephen King's stories, this takes place in Castle Rock, Maine, which is always awesome. And I'd consider myself a pretty big fan of Stephen King, although admittedly, I've only read a handful of his books. I really do plan to read more. I've been saying that for years now. It's actually been a long time since I've read any of his stuff. And I would like to read The Dark Half, because I have a feeling that it would work better that way. I think this story is much better suited in a Stephen King novel than it is for a movie. Not that that's a rare thing, but, sometimes adaptations are better than others. This one's okay. Like I said, I had a decent time with it. The performances are really solid just across the board. Everyone here is really good. Timothy Hutton does most of the heavy lifting here, since he does play two characters. The second of which I won't spoil for you, because that's something you got to find out on your own. Michael Rooker, he's good here as always, as he always is, even if he was far less known back then. His Sheriff Pangborn character was cool. He's that old school likable cop who takes his job very serious, as he should, but is first and foremost concerned about making the right decisions and protecting people. Him not immediately arresting Thad seemed kind of unrealistic to me, but it did show Pangborn's character, choosing to give Thad the benefit of the doubt. Amy Madigan was also good, playing Thad's wife, Liz, minus the part where she yells at their two babies during a tense moment. I assume that part was in the book and they just decided to use it, since Stephen King's writing can be a little jarring and wacky at times, but it didn't transfer well to film. I think they should have left that scene out. George Romero shines here as well. I thought there were some great shots, especially early on, capturing those Stephen King vibes, the Stephen King universe vibes that you would need for a movie like this. And oddly enough, I was kind of reminded of In the Mouth of Madness, although that's a far better film than this. But Romero also wrote the screenplay. He was also reminded again that he didn't really enjoy doing big studio films at all. The release of The Dark Half seemed doomed from the start. I mean, it took 2 years for Orion Pictures to release it due to their financial state at the time. It also bombed in theaters, bringing in $10.6 million off of a $15 million budget. Not good. Again, for the third time, I liked this movie okay, but I didn't love it. I do have a feeling that the book is far more engaging. I was on board for the first few acts, but by the end, I was really kind of ready for it to be over, I have to admit. The climax wasn't a huge payoff for me, although there is a very cool, gory scene that I liked, probably my second favorite part of the movie. So I'm giving The Dark Half a 5.5 out of 10. I pretty much only recommend it to diehard King and Romero fans, or people that want to be entertained by seeing Timothy Hutton play two characters, which is fun. Cheers, guys.